Early moved.
Present.
Cheryl Flesher.
Present.
Shirley Tolliver.
Present.
Lori Hicks. Steve Baker present. Nicole Kingus.
Thank you. Are there any corrections to the agenda? There are no corrections to the agenda. We will proceed as written. Recognition of people and programs, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I have one thing tonight. We have, you would receive this email from Mrs. Hughes, and so it has all the information on their Black History Month events and those kinds of things. So if you, it's somewhere in your mailbox you want me to get you a hard copy of that, I'd be glad to do that. Otherwise, you do have that. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, next item on the agenda. Are there any thing from the board other than me? I went to Washington last week to talk about what our districts need from our senators and our congresspeople. I'll give you a report next week. And it was very nice. We had breakfast with Senator Stabenow and Senator Gary Peters. And I got to talk with Kelly Stevens, Rashida Tlaib, Debbie Dingle, plus the Wayne County, Risa gave her a plaque, and they honored her. And that was very nice. Okay, next item on the agenda. Are there any comments from the audience? Topics not related to the agenda.
There are none, Madam Vice President.
Okay. First up, the plan for improvement.
We did not have any deltas at the last meeting.
Very good. Consent agenda. Do I have a board member willing to adopt the agenda?
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to move the adoption of the following resolution, please.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Fletcher and supported by Mrs. Early. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda.
Any opposed, Madam Vice President?
Oh, any opposed? No. All right. All in favor, say aye. Okay, that's good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is communication from SREA, and that would be Dana Beck and SRPA Donna Abner.
Need glasses now. Katie Poyer from Thurston took 10 students to a Detroit Economic Club meeting at Cobo Hall on Friday. They got to meet and greet Governor Whitmer, followed by listening to her first public remarks since the budget was announced. Afterwards, they attended a strolling luncheon and sat with Jim Anderson, President and CEO of Urban Science. BASE, LEAD, and LINK have partnered with Thurston's Culturally Responsive Education Team to celebrate Black History Month throughout the month of February. So far, they've had 3 successful days of making posters to commemorate iconic figures in Black history, both past and present. They have also recognized the accomplishments of unsung female heroes through a viewing of the film Hidden Figures. And today, students were invited to participate in African dance and step lessons during advisory led by Mrs. Tony Smith of the Movement of Dance Mobile Dance Studio. The ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Redford chapter have been diligent about bringing HBCU awareness to Thurston by decorating a display showcased by the Media Center, which highlights several HBCUs as well as the sorority. and that is historically black colleges and universities. They have planned more throughout the month, including a salute to HBCUs on Wednesday, February 12th, where students are asked to wear a t-shirt from an HBCU or chosen school colors. In addition, classroom door decorating is happening throughout the month, highlighting iconic moments in people in Black history. The Thurston Chamber Choir participated in the Michigan School Vocal Music Association District 12 Solo and Ensemble Festival on Saturday, February 8th, and they are proud to announce that the ladies received a first division rating.
That's great.
Yeah, Josh Pizzovi was awarded a Surfy grant for a set of classroom headphones with attached microphone to help with projects such as audiobooks, videos, and Flipgrid assignments. He is thankful for the hardworking and generous Surfy committee that raises funds for the teachers of the district in the classrooms. And 15 students who will form Thurston's poetry team began a writing workshop with a teacher and a published poet on Friday in Thurston's alumni room. The students are already gifted writers, but over the next few months will be able to hone both their writing and their performance skills, and this is all possible due to a South Redford Foundation grant. And the Thurston SRC director, Lawrence Simmons, was recognized as Pistons Game Changer.
Right.
And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. We're always thankful that you invite us to communicate. Some months we have more things to report on than others. This is one of those lower months. Just the normal, assisting our administrators and other things that they need help with is something that's really important to all of us. You mentioned the grants, which that's funny because I have that also, because the grants come then to us and we order all the things. There's a lot of grants out there. MEMIC grants are also out there along with the Surfy grants, so those are rolling in, and we're glad that a lot of our teachers have received those grants, so I get to see those things come in and the fun things they get to order for their rooms that they wouldn't have otherwise. This month, last few days and coming up days, 2 of our group have been assisting over here at central office, moving grades from the Teacher Ease into MyStar. So we're thankful that Morgan and Alicia have been able to help with that. And pretty much that's most of what I have to report. We're actually already working on some of the end of the year things, which makes the year go by way too fast for us. Some people get excited about, the end of the year, but it means a lot for preparation for the year coming for us, so it starts very early. So that's all I have.
Can you tell us how many grants Surfy had?
So we have Josh Pizzovi has the grant, and then we have 2 MEMIC grants. And then we also have, Ms. Shambo has a MEMIC grant, and Mrs. Gonzalez has one that she's still working on from last year. And Mr. Gonzalez also got a MEMIC grant this year. No, his was Surfy. And our robotics group gets money from Daimler, which is another grant, and that's a big grant. They get $5,000 to work with, yeah. So it's a lot of things that would not be able to be purchased, because those are, especially robotics, that's such a specialized classroom, and he gets a lot of things for that room. He's very thankful. And I know Mr. Gonzalez is very excited. He got a TV and a mount for his room. And he's wanting it up right now because he's already got a plan for it. So it arrived today, and he's already talked to maintenance. So
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda, consider Wayne County Enhancement Village. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. At our meeting on January 27, 2020, the board discussed a countywide regional enhancement village proposal. Section 705 of the revised school code of 1976 as amended through MCL 380.705, Section 705, provides for the levy of a regional enhancement property tax by an intermediate school district at a rate not to exceed 3 mils for the purpose of enhancing other state and local funding for local school district operating purposes, if approved by a majority of the intermediate school district electors. Proceeds of a millage levied pursuant to Section 705 are paid to each constituent school district by the intermediate school district in an amount calculated on a per pupil basis as provided in Section 705. In an effort to increase revenue for school districts in Wayne County RESA has submitted to its intermediate school district electors the question of a regional enhancement millage proposal for 2 mills for a period of 6 years, 2022 through 2027, inclusive. For the state general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020. Our board is asked to consider a resolution in support of this regional enhancement millage proposal by July 14, 2020. The Wayne RESA board will vote on the adoption of a resolution certifying the text of the ballot proposal on July 15, 2020. This text will be certified to all county and local clerks on July 16, 2020 for the November election. Madam Vice President, there's a resolution attached for board certification consideration.
Do I have any questions from any board members? Mr. Carter? Do I have a member that's willing to adopt the resolution?
Madam Vice President, I'd like to move the adoption of the following resolution, please.
Do I have support?
Banker.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I guess there's none. Resolution is approved. Okay. Next item on the agenda, discuss shared time program contract. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We are looking at extending the shared time program through school financial services. This has been a very, very, a very good agreement for South Bedford schools. We've been working with this company for, I think, probably about 6 years, and it's our shared time program, and it's really been profitable for us. This current year's profit for us on this program will be about $1.9 million. Again, allows us to do a lot of things that we would normally be able to do without that, like coaches and things that we've talked about in the past. I am recommending in the contract a 0.5% increase, which would be about $25,000. The money would go towards, it wouldn't actually pay for a whole person, but it will it offset the cost of hiring another person for school financial services. And what that person will do will be doing really a lot of work that we're doing actually in our HR department and our finance department. And so this person would take a lot of the work that we're doing for the shared time program, and it would become, they would do that work in that office. And so it certainly will relieve our employees from some of that work. And you might ask, well, what is it? Why would you do that? Because it streamlines their work too. We have about 600 students in that program, But you have to remember, they're not full students. It's only a small percentage of their time in school. And so, so they probably deal with somewhere around, right now, I can get this exact number if you want it, but probably 6,000 or 7,000 students and a number of teachers. And so by having an additional person in their office doing this work, it really streamlines the work for them. So it's really a win-win for both of us.
Yes, Mr. Baker.
This will come back to us for a consideration in the future.
Yeah, next week.
Any more questions?
I will say too that School Financial Services and the owner is Jack Pilon. Most of you know him. He's also very, very generous to the district. He has donated very generously to Surfy and other things that we have going in the district, and so he is. He really is. It's really nice for a partnership. His group gets together, gets along really well with our group, so it's a really nice arrangement that we have working out. So.
Next item on the agenda is technology demonstration. Clever Touch Board, is that Miss Mary Ruth?
So I'm probably a little crazy. This is my first time demonstrating this in front of anybody, and I'm doing it in front of you. That could be really crazy, but we'll see how it goes. How many of you have seen this in a classroom? Well, then you probably could come up here and do it, but I am going to give you opportunities. So, all right. A little bit tall for me, but that's okay. All right, so it is interactive technology, so I hope you're ready to interact tonight. So here's what. There are 50 Clever Touch boards in 4 elementary buildings. So what is Clever Touch for Education? I'm going to let you read this. This is from the company. And I want you to share some words or phrases that stand out for you. What are some key words that stand out for you?
Immersive.
Immersive.
Collaborative learning.
Pardon?
Collaborative learning.
Right.
Free.
Free. I thought one of them would have said that. Yep.
Engaging.
Pardon?
Engaging.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so interactive, and that's what we're going to do tonight. All right, so what is Clever Touch? It has 2 main parts, and the first one we're using right now through HDMI 3. It connects to the computer and displays what is there. So, and you'll notice that I can change it up here too. And then Lux is just when the board becomes a computer in itself. So I'm going to show you both of those things. All right, so here are some HDMI features. When the board is communicating with the computer, you can do various on-screen annotations. So one of the things you can do is you can draw, and you can choose different colors to draw with. Just kind of do sort of fun little things. You can write, and it will type for you. And that's all I'm going to show you right now for that. So then you can enlarge. And I think that's really fun because you can move this around. I'm not really sure how you use this, but I think it's really fun. You can clip things. So if you wanted to only look at only a small part of this and maybe save it for something else, you can clip it out and put it somewhere else. Then there's tools. There's a flashlight. I happen to like this one. So talk about being engaging with kids and wanting to really focus in on something. There's a timer. There's a stopwatch. And you can even do a QR code. So, I'm sure you've noticed that I have 2 words misspelled up here.
Yes.
And so I would like someone to come edit those words for me. Would someone like to come up and underline the misspelled word, and then you can either write it just with your finger, or you can write it and have it typed. So who would like to come find my first misspelled word? You know you want to. You know you want to.
Grab the red pen.
What color?
What do I want, the
If you want it to type after you write it, yes.
A? Okay. Didn't recognize that. Wow, I was doing it, Martin.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
Hold on, I'll get that one off now.
Yeah,
I can do the whole, there's a whole.
yeah. There's a way to do it, not the whole thing. I don't know everything about this word. All right. There's one more that's misspelled. Who would like to come find it and spell it correctly?
I'll try this.
Okay, we're going to do. Well, you can use either just the pencil, or you can do what Mr. Baker did, which is have it typed from you. Okay, no, I'm going to turn back up for you there. All right.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'll do that. Where does it sound? There.
All right.
Nice.
All right. Very good, class. All right. So now-
Does it have a spell check feature?
That's a really good question that I don't know the answer to. But I'm sure a classroom teacher would know that. All right, so now I'm going to show you the second part of this. And this is the computer when it becomes its own computer. Oh shoot, that's not what I want to do yet, so sorry. Gotta help myself. Alright, so I'm going to show you all of these features when it becomes its own computer. So it becomes a whiteboard, and you can use this little pen here. I'm going to show you about that. It's to talk to the computer. A dual pen, it types just like what you did. It has equations, shapes, it has a paint feature, same tools as the board here. It has a browser, you can go right to the internet. It has built-in apps, and you can get new apps. It works with the phone as a remote or a camera. So now I'm going to show you all these features. All right. So first thing that I'm going to show you is the whiteboard. All right. So on the whiteboard, a student or two students will come up to the board, and this pen, it's a dual pen because one end is one color and the other end is another color, so you can see different students and the work that they're doing.
That's all.
It has the type feature that you just saw. It has an equation. Oh, it doesn't do that for the type on the other one. I'll do it on this one. All right. So I can write the equation for you. It has a shapes feature. So you can draw shapes, you can pick your color, and you can do 3D shapes as well.
On your equation, if you had said 6, would it have told you that was wrong?
That is a good question.
Let's try it.
Let's see. All right. Nope. It's not that clever. All right. So now is your time to be interactive again. All right. So I'm going to make 2 columns, actually 3 columns up here. And this is going to be 4. Vertices 3. Vertices. All right. So I would like you to come choose a shape. You're going to draw it in the column that it goes in. And you can pick whatever color you want. I'm just going to model it for you first. So 0 vertices, I'm going to choose that shape, and I'm going to choose this nice hot pink color, and then I'm going to just touch
That's
and
all right.
drag. All right? So, who would like to come choose another shape and put it in the right spot?
Go ahead, Shirley. 2 of us are hungry to work.
I know.
I didn't pick a very good night for
Okay, now, we do it.
Oh, look what I can do.
All right.
Anybody else like to leave?
Since orange is my favorite color, we will do that.
All right. Okay.
All right.
So, this is the interactive portion of our demonstration. All right. Yeah.
Can, from my understanding, 2 students can work on it at the same time?
Yes. Yep. They could choose different colors, and yeah, so that you could watch them.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, what I want to do here. All right. As I mentioned, it's also a browser. It'll take you to the internet, so you can search anything here. And remember that cut feature? You could cut something out that you Googled and then put it in another document somewhere. Let me get this a little bit tall for me. The apps. So it has, I don't know, do all of the boards have the same apps built in? So it has these different apps that are built in. And then you can also go to an app store to find more vetted educational apps. making your favorites. So that is that. All right. So I'm going to go back to the whiteboard. I'm going to show you how it works with the phone. So I thought it was going to be really clever and have this ready to go. And as I typed in the number, I watched this number change 3 times. I was like, really? So.
Is there an IP here?
All right. So it
Oh,
becomes
wow.
a document camera, and somehow it becomes like fills up the whole space.
Oh.
I can't
Oh
see
my
it.
God.
How fun is that, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's all right.
yeah. And then it shows that document. So teachers can use it immediately with students in their work, showing it up on the board.
That's really cool.
Wow.
That's all
It
right.
also works as a remote, but my phone is too small for it really to, I have trouble using it that way. All right.
What do you mean a remote?
So like I could stand over here
Mm-hmm.
and do things with it.
Oh, okay. So you could
So
write
let's
on
see.
the whiteboard from your phone?
Yep, see?
Oh, look at
Oh.
But I can't like, the buttons are so small, I
Yeah.
can't do it.
But if you
But
had
yes,
an
you're saying-
iPad
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
or younger
Or
eyes.
a big phone.
Yeah.
Or a student with.
Yeah. So again, you can be out with your class and doing things that are up on the board.
Mhm.
That's all right.
Mrs. Berger,
Yes.
we were amazed by the Promethean boards. They were the best thing in the world.
And that's what I had, yeah.
Yeah. So compare this to the Promethean.
Oh boy.
Chevet and Corvette, or
So say that again.
Chevet and Corvette?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, 150% better. Just the interaction of it, the ability that, you don't have to like prepare certain things like you did for the Promethean board. You had to only use certain, and I can't remember what they're called now, but certain slideshows and their features. So this is just much more flexible and clever.
Mary Ruth, can
I
I
think-
continue the
Yeah.
answer that? Additionally, this doesn't require a projector. And that has long-lasting recurring costs with the bulbs and whatnot. Also, the ability to be a document camera and a slate, those are 2 additional pieces that schools buy in addition. So you need the Promethean board. Using your phone is what Promethean would call a slate. It allows teachers to walk around the classroom and still control the board. But that's an expensive little picture. Donna can tell you the exact amount.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and we can't replace the slates anymore. So we actually were just talking to our media specialist and the tech department about, now that we've got them that are going bad, media boards, what did they think about replacing them with this? And they're saying, yes, that is the way to go.
And the ability to have multiple students touch the board at the same time was not possible with Promethean board, and that's a game changer for engagement.
I think something else, another dimension of that question is, it's probably 15 years since we purchased our first Promethean board. It's 15 years of innovation and
Right.
technology changes that you're seeing between the two. So, and I know Christine touched on this a little bit, but the bulbs on the projectors are really expensive, and so once you put them on all of your classrooms, then you have that cost which you don't have here, obviously. And some of our buildings, like Fisher, because it's the electrical system is so old and so patched because of all the additions and stuff, that building can eat bulbs. just because of the surges, I guess, and that kind of thing. So we always had a hard time keeping the bulbs and the projectors working in those. And particularly Fisher probably has its own unique issues because it's so old and it has its own electrical issues. So.
Anticipated life cycle for these before they become obsolete?
Good question.
And for Mr. Valdez, are we anticipating buying more of them? I think she said we have 50 of them now. Are we going to buy more?
We'll continue to put those in classrooms when we can afford them and get money towards them. Also keeping in mind though that should the board in the next year or so decide that we're going to go after a bond, then we would. I think what we need to do as a district is really work in terms of what should the standard classroom look like, and then standardize that across the district. We really haven't done that, but that's something that I believe we need to do if in fact the board goes in that direction. And so, that will probably a whole other phase of that question. So.
Thank you. Nice job.
That's
I'm
great.
glad back in my office.
Yeah.
So, now what? Go visit an elementary classroom where they do a lot more cool things than what I do here. All right, thanks. Any questions? Any other questions?
I just have one more comment. Pierce has one in the media center, and it's on a mount that allows it to be horizontal or vertical. So it can be flat and used with students to gather around, and so they could, for example, put a map of the world on it and gather around and expand and enlarge, or Google Earth, or other things. They have air hockey, which we did at our staff meeting, and other things. That's interesting twist on it.
That would be a cool way to enlarge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice job, nice job. Next item on the agenda, discuss updates to board policy.
Sure, that's me. The policy committee met and went through suggested changes from Neola that were mostly law-driven, and the board was given a couple weeks ago the law memorandums, the background for changes, and then they were given the changes that the policy committee suggested that we bring back to the board for discussion. So the only one I heard back from with any questions was Steve. So I'd like to turn it over to Steve so he can tell us what he wants to discuss and we can hash it out.
Thank you, Cheryl. And there's a surprise that I actually wrote anything, right?
No, it's not.
I'm joking.
He's pressing my buttons because he knows exactly what he does to me every Sunday night. Keeps me on my toes.
And Jan was kind enough I submitted this to not only the board, but also some of the administration and Jan was nice enough to clarify some things. So I think I'm just going to leave pages 7, 8, and 10, just leave those as
Untouched?
Yeah.
That was good enough?
Because she answered that. The others, there's typos and that kind of thing that are strewn throughout, but and in some of the places where it says board instead of district, but we talked about that ad nauseum, so I think we just leave
And we
that.
appreciate any of those catches because each
Yeah.
time Jan goes in, she puts those in.
Yeah.
Because that's my main focus as the chair. I'm not looking at that, so I greatly appreciate that that's your forte.
No worries.
We're focusing on the law part and trying to keep it where our district is compliant with everything
Yeah.
we need to do.
Look at page 20. The statement that is made next to the last paragraph, the second to last paragraph. Any school personnel who have reason to believe that a student is having an opioid-related overdose must call 911. I think that's a bit strong. I put a note here that said, or have 911 called. I would rather that person, because part of what's talked about here is the antidote for that. I would rather they continue doing that on a heads-up basis and somebody call 911. So my statement was, or have 911 called, something like that. Does that make sense?
Oh, I think that's good. It's just like when you're giving CPR.
Yeah.
You don't stop what you're doing to
Right.
call. You just say, hey, call. So I think that's a very good catch, Steve.
One other note for number 25, it talks about unmanned aircraft. I like that there is an exception there based on the superintendent's approval. Because I could see that maybe PHTV has a little drone that's flying over graduation and they shoot some footage, that kind of thing, but that would obviously come over your signature, and so I like that there's that exception there. Page 29. The statement in part reads, "This warning includes staff members' online conduct that occurs off school property, including from the employee's private computer," and I'm suggesting that we also add "or device," since most social media actually, I think, occurs from iPhones or cell phones or whatever, like that. Not just say private computer, but or device. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
33 and 34 were actually some misprints, and so I have no concerns there. So reality is there's very, very few things based on the corrections that Jen gave us this afternoon. So, yes.
The numbers, page 16.
Page 16? Yeah, I'm just dropping it.
You know, I think I have some language that works
Okay.
based on our previous conversation.
Let me read the statement, and then I'll share my thought, and then Brian, you will jump in. This comes for the audience benefit. It comes under professional staff evaluation. One statement says, "The district shall ensure that within 30 days after each observation, the teacher is provided with feedback from the observation." And my suggestion was that we either say written or oral or both, something like that, that is explanatory. But you have some suggestions there, Brian?
Yeah, written or oral. I think that was fine.
I'm gonna smack you.
Turn the camera off first.
Yeah, really.
Okay.
After busting my chops
So
for
we're,
10 minutes before this meeting.
so
and now
we're
you
good
come
to
to
add that. I'm gonna put we're good to add
I
that
think that's a
language.
great idea.
Yes.
I second that.
Any other questions, concerns about it? Will come back to the board in 2 weeks.
I'm a little concerned about my health.
Yes.
Um,
And I would respectfully suggest that if it says written or oral, that it can't be both. So I would say written or oral,
Okay,
or both.
which satisfies Brian's concern, right?
Yes.
Is that for you, Mr.
Yes.
And just a heads up, toward the end of the month, this is just nothing, this is a prelim, is our big time of policy changes is coming up in the next month or so. So that'll be major, and it'll probably be a longer process.
Yeah.
You know, Jan worked really hard, and did you guys like, because I know the committee likes, she started putting the page numbers.
I think it's
So when
so
we,
much more
instead of
helpful.
going back and forth, any other input, because she works really close, always tweaking, and we really liked it as a committee, so we had someplace, you know, we knew right to go.
And then, yeah, so we all are on the same page, absolutely.
And then she
Yeah.
eliminated all the confusing stuff where it wasn't changes, just so we weren't focusing back and forth. So she's really kind of simplified it and it runs really smoothly. But
Yep.
if you guys have any questions or concerns, just let me or her know. But thank you. Thanks again, Steve.
Yep, my privilege.
Did you say written or oral?
Or both.
Did you get it?
Oh, I can put or both.
Okay.
Because that way it could be both, otherwise it can only be one or the other.
Page 16, you want or both. Okay.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Or both, I got it.
That's all right.
Steve, do you want to send Jan the changes?
Oh,
Just to make sure.
but she got them already.
But these that we
Oh.
approved, or you
Go
want
ahead,
me to do
go
it?
ahead.
Okay.
Because the other ones were, district versus board and some typos
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
All right. Well, you know what?
Mm.
Next, we good.
This will come back next time for a vote.
For a vote, yes. You did do what?
I thought.
My work
this-
is done
I know.
with my trustee.
Yes, I
person
know.
over there.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is comments from the audience, topics related to the agenda.
We have none, Madam Vice President.
Right. Next item on the agenda, plus Delta and board comments. That would be Dr. Holford.
Thank you. For this next meeting, do we have any pluses and deltas? Can you give me some feedback on what worked well for our meeting today?
To the chair,
Yes.
I have a plus. It always helps me that we have somebody on the board like Steve that likes to look at the dots, the Ts, which allows me to focus on the other stuff, and then we're kind of like getting two jobs done at once. So Steve, I appreciate that very much.
Other pluses for the meeting this evening?
I have a plus. I always like Mary Ruth because she does such a great job, and I love her. She's not even here.
But she will be.
She's writing a request for her new board in her office.
Right. I'm on my chair in the morning, right?
Yeah. What other pluses?
And
And
of
I-
course, we like to always thank Jan for her dedication and all her hard work.
I want to piggyback on the clever, is it Clever Touch?
Clever Touch.
That she made it interactive, which is the whole point of it. She could have just lectured
Yeah.
us and
Yeah,
she had us do it.
that was great. Yes.
She would make a good teacher someday.
Any deltas? Things we could improve upon?
And, we-
Temperature in this room is hot.
Oh,
Hot, isn't it?
It's hot. I'm warm.
sit down.
75.
Sometimes they give me temperature. My other one has a temperature reading, so.
Well, I thought,
Oh, it does?
I thought it was just comfortable, but you know I'm cold all the time.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to do with that one, but I'll work on it for the next meeting.
You're always up and down with the thermostat.
Yes.
I want to thank our two union reps for being here. We love the relationship that we have with our unions and the collaborativeness, and so thank you for being here and reporting and helping us see the bigger picture too. And Coach Coons.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment on that, and it has nothing to do with the meeting, but it has to do with with Ms. Kuhn, her dedication towards the work that she's doing for an advanced degree. Certainly, we have lots of people who get advanced degrees, and there's certain requirements that you have to do to make sure that you get those. But I don't know that I've ever had anyone who has been so diligent and so in engaged in it. She's been to a lot of different meetings that we've had. She's been allowed to come into and get engaged in. After every single meeting, we do a debrief and a reflection, and her insight into the work that we do as an administrative team or a board or a special committee has been very impressive. And so I've certainly enjoyed the conversation and even learn a few things as we go forward. So I just wanted to comment on your dedication to this. She's clearly not checking off the boxes or putting in the time. She's really in the spirit of continuous improvement and doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
To the chair.
Mr. Baker.
Coach, tell us what the degree is, from where?
Sure.
Walk us a little.
Sure, so it's, the eventual goal is a doctoral degree.
Okay.
Currently, I'm finishing up the Ed Specialist, which is in leadership,
Right.
and this semester is internship with Action Research to obtain a central office certification. And then after that begins the writing, the dissertation in the fall. So the ultimate goal is to be done May of 2022,
Okay.
as long as I can stay on track and my own 2 children at home don't
Yeah.
steer me in the wrong way. So
And this would be PhD or EDD?
it's EDD.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, that's great.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. That's great. What's
And
cool?
Chair,
Madonna.
That's fantastic.
And I just want to say, we had the pleasure of her sitting in for our policy
Yes, that
meeting.
was good.
And I tell you, it's wonderful to see you here, that we didn't scare you away. I mean, she weathered that very well, and she fit very, it was very nice. And it's even nicer to see her sitting there.
Yes, I was surprised. I said, oh, we didn't,
No.
we must have been nice to her.
We invite people and stuff, but to actually see somebody there and
Yeah.
engaging is just very refreshing, and it's a nice change, so thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Anything else? Next item on the agenda is book study, sticking points.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Vice
Bob.
President. Thank you, Madam Vice President, members of the Board of Education, audience members this evening. So this evening marks the conclusion of our book study.
You don't need to stay.
If
You
you
are
don't-
welcome to leave,
Yeah.
okay? But you're also welcome to stay. I just want to give you that.
Oh, you're fine. So, yeah, I will not be offended if you decide to go.
Good seeing you.
Yes, you too.
Thanks.
I would almost think if he's gonna give us extra job and bring us up, then we need to table this till we're all sitting at the table.
Oh, well, thanks. I don't know if it's the plan, but maybe.
So,
Jason, you're gonna be kind to us, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I have to tell you, Jason, I don't read a bunch of
That's okay.
In all honesty, if we're being honest, I read 2, because that's all my granddaughter allowed me to do today.
I read all of them. All right.
There you go.
So,
I'm done eating out of the book.
in
Try real hard.
But I did get an email from Amy, that's been popping in. She
Oh,
really
yeah.
wanted to come,
Yeah.
but she got tied up overseeing kids,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
for sports events. But she wanted to say thank you to the board for making her feel welcome, getting a book tour.
Oh, great.
We talked a little bit
Yeah.
about that
Yes,
book
we
at
did.
Vandenberg
Yeah.
last week too.
Yeah.
When I passed her in the hall, but she's sad that she couldn't be here to wrap. No,
At Vandenberg.
at Vandenberg. It's on t-shirt.
Amy Shelby.
Yeah,
Oh,
Amy Shelby.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, that's good feedback. And so, regardless of whether or not you've had an opportunity to read the concluding 3 chapters of the book, I can assure you that our activities will still be friendly to everybody, regardless of how much you've read or have not read. And so that is okay. And so sticking with our mantra, you have your FAQ guides or your quick reference sheets there. So you'll notice that the first one is respect, and you get the quick little quadrant there of the traditionalists, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, and then the millennials about why they think the way that they do as it pertains to respect. And then if you flip it over onto the back, you have our 4 quadrants about training and how and why the 4 different generations expect different things from training. And then on the last page, you have work ethic. And so again, regardless if you had an opportunity to read the final 3 chapters or not, you have those FAQ guides. And then on the very last page, you have our 6 questions for this evening. And so you'll see a picture of Aretha Franklin, right? You have the Queen of Soul at the top. So in honor of her legacy, we're going to talk about respect tonight. And so we're going to actually break off into groups. And again, regardless if you had an opportunity to read or not, I can assure you that you will be all right, which is also part of Motown songs as well, right? So we're going to pair up Shirley and Cheryl. So if you would be so kind to take the first 2 questions, speaking of the Queen of Soul and respect, if the 2 of you would take a look at those first 2 questions, and then we're going to have Misha and Christine Hofer together, and they're going to take a look at training. So you have questions 3 and 4, and then Ryan and Steve and Becky.
And Becky, okay.
And Becky, if you would like, no pressure. If the 3 of you or 2 of you would cover questions 5 and 6, the 3 of you have work ethic. Okay? So, we are going to transition to our groups. Each group has 2 questions. We will allow each group, everyone, all groups will have 10 minutes. So it's almost 7:30. So we will come back together, or it is 7:30. So we'll come back together at 7:40 and see where we're at. What questions might you have before we transition? Okay,
Are we going to be reporting out, and are
We
you
will be.
picking somebody, or are we picking from within? Since that has been a point of consternation in the
You can selectively appoint out of whether you or your partner or partners want to report out, or if you want to split up. If each of you want to take 1 question, that's fine.
All right.
So, good question.
Steve, got it. And then Jason's going to sing respect after we report out. He's going to do his Aretha rendition of respect. It's only 10.
I usually did get a chance to write down a little bit, and I haven't read one through
Yeah, you're
15, but knowing this is coming up, I read 16, 17,
Okay.
and on, so I did get a chance to look at it. It's very interesting. I couldn't tell if I was in a Gen X or
Respect.
between the 2. Generation 2.
His work ethic is custom, so you have traits of both, how he will describe
Right.
it.
Got it. I got her back.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're doing 5 and 6, right?
Right.
What does describe it? I'm not recording.
I think it's there's an old guy that's talking over
We'll do that. There you go. That's it.
I'll watch videos, but not for trash.
Describe what.
I'll watch what
I'm listening.
I don't think it's fun. Music or something.
Right,
Yeah.
isn't
I'm just
necessarily
gain knowledge from
the
it,
time
but
I walk
I'm
in
not
stores, but
retaining more than I used.
What if they're watching a video about a situation?
Yeah.
I do that.
Yes. Yeah.
There might be a video that
Making
can
the best
capture
that I
some.
can do, knowing that
You know?
there's been
Yeah.
moments during
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
day where there's can't focus, and there's can't do it once you start at home and finish it
Yeah,
there.
those types of things I could.
Yeah.
but it was like me, I had to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, let's see what it
Doing
says
the
here.
task
Oh,
that I'm getting paid for, or that I've been assigned.
That's true. I did that totally.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't mind
training is
taking things that's out
Yeah.
producing, but then back to it. Well,
Yeah.
well, you read it about,
Yeah.
part of the issue was early on.
Yeah.
High producer.
Right, right.
But then we'll spend a ton of time on getting the open. Really, it's not.
I'm a Gen
That's
X.
not the way to land it.
You're a Gen X,
Giving the,
you know?
Yeah.
too much. You know what you have to do, and you get a tax.
You know, we are directing you to sing.
And I think what kind of puts my foot in
You
that.
have a chair at the table. And we know you can sing because you get that tell from your mother. We heard her sing,
This is
You're
true.
working hard.
you know?
This is true.
You've been singing since you were a wee little guy.
True story.
Yeah,
True story.
Okay.
I'm not a good voice tonight, though.
I guess I have a little for myself.
Oh, yeah, I
In that
yeah.
I would do
So some
more or
exercise
extra
steps,
or
right?
something, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, you can't kind of coast a little bit and do some more stuff. I think that's the only place I would maybe differ, not from you guys, but from that example. Like it's,
The other thing that I don't think he explored even now was the notion that we're not an island. We're-
All generations want
So
to
my
learn
work depends on you. So
and
he does talk about availability for meetings.
Respect.
But if I come in at 8 and I need you at 8:15, and I don't know when you're gonna show up, and you show up at 10. So then I lost productivity.
It's just a skin through the lens.
Right, how that's.
I'm not sure that's just a generational thing. I think that is a respect issue. If I know you're coming at 10, that's fine, then I'll wait there. But I've been waiting for you. Does that make sense?
No, and I think you're right, it's not a issue because I never want to make someone else wait on me.
Yeah.
I would never want to be that person. If they're expecting
Right.
something to be done, is my mentality, I need to make sure I take care of it because I don't want them to be waiting on me.
Yeah.
And I kind of expect the same in return too.
Right.
Don't always. That's good.
And I was trying to put this in the context of school. So you're a millennial and you say, you know what? That class is 22. The middle class person.
Room with television and entertainment.
So do we do that? So some of this is tailored to the either entrepreneurial or
Gen X is expected
the
to
creative arts, where
challenges.
make me a poster. And I need it by Friday at 6. Well, then that's one thing. So you do the
Beyond
afternoon.
jobs.
But there's a lot of things. He does this a little bit in terms of like faculty, but if it's a collaborative work environment where more than one person wants to be there, then I'm not sure how that all fits in.
whether we like it or not depending on our age, for the most part, we are driven by a schedule.
Yeah.
With the way we're currently. What you got?
Yeah. I don't know if we answered that.
Basically, it's offered choice.
All right, right, you get to report it out.
Right.
One of the fast steps. Every generation is different. Ours is raising the fast steps. Successful.
I know some of it spoke to how people were raised. You know, I go back
Right.
to my parents. They both graduated from college, but they worked 2-3 jobs,
Yep.
you know, to make ends meet and to make sure that my sister and I were well provided for. You know, with also the idea that they didn't want us to have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and so part of my viewpoint and my mentality is I work very hard, but I also try to stop and realized I don't want my kids to also feel the same way I felt with my parents. Constantly stressing me, being gone and working and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Shelley's dad, Bertie's right from Maryland, about her lead engineer at Chrysler, but never had a college education. He was right over here when we were starting to do CAD and all that. You know, that kind of thing, right? But he put all of his three kids through college. And it was that same kind of thing that he wanted that advancement. The one thing is was especially when I kids in the is that the kid was
different generational
usually not very well, but what you know rather than
rarely do you need step on it.
whereas I think for my generation,
It's illustrated by the National Center for Research
that makes you across where it was. Whereas I think the knows what we was
They're willing to question,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not just take it as face value.
Right. And it comes across as not just
Too awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And part of it is that they would like us to, you know,
Yes.
but
You said yes, I said it's good, it's only because she's gonna talk.
How many more minutes?
How much more?
You think?
We have to summarize the 5 steps.
there we go. Give them an hour.
Becky, how many more minutes should we?
I'll send you in charge.
Oh, I know.
You made eye contact, that's the first mistake. Looking at somebody else at the table. Yeah. And they're the
Now we
ones.
have
Becky's gonna end up sharing a committee before the night's over
Yes.
buying a car.
You can add her to any of mine anytime.
I think we can use their two.
All right, we're gonna compromise. We're gonna take 4 more minutes.
Doesn't matter how many hours I work, as long as it gets done. Do I have to come to the office or can I?
And for those of you that are accelerated, there's a bonus question. The bonus question.
Oh, J Bob, you got in
Bonus
trouble
question.
last time you did
For
this.
accelerated, maybe everybody might not be there. But for those of you that are ready for extended learning, to stretch your brains, if you could have dinner with any leader, dead or alive, famous or not, but somebody who in your mind exemplifies leadership, dead or alive, you could have dinner with any leader, who would you have dinner with and why? Bonus question.
He's Steve. He chose now to throw this into the wrench because we already did our plus delta. So I can't delta it.
Yeah, but we can come back later. Just saying.
long memory.
What?
Oh, yeah.
No, I didn't hear the why.
Did you say NY?
Don't give him any ideas.
And why? And why? Yep.
Don't give him any ideas.
What you gonna do with it?
Oh, I
Yeah,
ain't gonna do it.
Yeah.
No, I know who it would be.
Yeah.
You know, where did you just
Oh,
come
my
from?
God.
My favorite
Yeah, this
person,
would really encourage.
where I like to escape is his home. Teach him no.
This is my
Yeah, no, he's my favorite.
And then I forgot to get your brother's phone number, because I was gonna call to see how your sister was.
She is going into work a couple of days. She is.
I never heard this
No,
from
really. Because she works somewhere to our White House. Are we okay?
Yeah.
More, I can't put it in writing, it's just like talking, it's feelings.
My daughter would say several of her friends have normal parents and I just don't know.
Well, those are the reflex we originally saw. You know, respect is the foundation of any relationship.
Generations different.
So is that different than a helicopter parent? The helicopter parent is someone who just hovers over them to make sure.
Or rural rescue.
Lawnmower grants don't even rescue, they just pave the way. It's like, here you go.
More difficult than it
They're
needs to
setting
be.
them up for success, whatever.
You know, because it's that. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, Lori, yeah, Laughlin.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Together.
I think it wasn't that one of the outcomes the kids said, well, why don't you just trust me?
And we get together.
All right, we're failing on the second question. We got about like half a minute. Mr. Timekeeper. Friends.
I think just focusing on why that generation's different.
Created the event, we were there.
And so, right, but this was, and Homer Street, this was your time of respect.
It wanted why we can come together with people right when they're there.
As well as
It really made me realize how powerful.
We're going to circle up in 30 seconds.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Right, exactly. That's personal, it's not personal. Yeah.
But I'm I really did. We
Get a
do,
viewer
we
sales guy.
can't give it. Do you know what I mean? But we should.
Why do generations differ?
Yeah,
Because you had to have, you at least had that business.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes, right.
Used to have it a lot.
I get to
Commercial.
spend here.
I didn't know what damn well it's.
Free now. And I used to pay for it. Gmail.
Oh, yeah, traditional.
Okay, we are going to circle back together.
Part of internships is learning to be adaptive. Just kidding.
I know who your spokesperson is.
No, we're not gonna throw her under the bus.
So we're going to turn the tables over to Shirley and Cheryl and hear out from the two of them about what respect means to them, and then question number two.
Okay, what respect means is common courtesy, it's listening to other people, it's treating people the way you want to be treated, being kind to people, fundamental to relationships, and respect is earned. Now, to summarize the 5 steps spoken here in chapter 17. Knowledge, appreciate, flex, leverage, and resolve. Okay, now, and how, go ahead, do your part.
She reads right off my notes and now she delegates where there's
You can
nothing.
tell she was in Washington, D.C. last week.
But, you know, I have to laugh. I mentored her very well because she now just flipped the card on my own game. You know, because I'm usually the one delegating, saying, go for it, guys. You know?
Perfect transition.
Acknowledgement to me is respect is the foundation of any relationship. And as Shirley said, it's, you earn that over time. And it's give and take on both ends. It's not something that's taken for granted. So I guess it would fall into putting and it's appreciating the difference. You know, if you go on to appreciate, there's differences in each of our generations. And it's our stories, as we've discussed before, that have turned us and molded us a certain way, how we've been brought up. Like for me, Brian shared with us at a board meeting about a phone coming out. I personally find it very disrespectful. I mean, at any time, the phone should be turned off. It shouldn't be going off because you should be paying attention. And Shirley, and she almost smacked me, I said, You know, and some of our generations look at respect is where you are in the matriarch or the system by just your title, being the president. And yes, I said president. You may not like the man, but he does hold the top seat of our nation. So I feel, because of my stories and how I was raised and my parents and grandparents raised me, we do owe him a certain amount of respect. It's the same with our superintendent or people we work with, our fellow board members. Flex to me is just a short thing for flexibility. You know, being flexible. Leverage? Oh, leverage could mean many things, good or bad, depending on the situation. And resolve is just is learning that we all come from different places, but maybe with the same mission or the end in sight. Because I think about applying it to us as a board in a school district, we have one thing, and that's our children, to make sure we educate them to the best of our ability. So that would be my resolve, and through that, you know, we grow with the respect and learning, and that's it.
And I have one other thing. That's just like Betsy DeVos. Now, even though when we were at the conference last year, nobody from Michigan stood up and clapped for her. But everybody else gave her a standing ovation. And so then I said, well, you know, guys, people who sit at the table, I said, you know, guys, we really gotta stand up. You know.
But didn't you just say respect is earned?
Yeah, but see.
I mean, you know, I'm just saying.
That's what Cheryl was saying about Trump.
Well, that comes with appreciating flexibility. I mean, we don't have to agree with them, but the respect pays a very important place.
Yeah.
And are we gonna do our bonus? Are we supposed to do our bonus now?
Not yet. Not yet.
Later?
All right.
So, wonderful job. And Misha, also thank you for your commentary too, because those are things to all be thinking about with respect and how that might shake out to a generational difference. But what is unique and what Cheryl and Shirley shared is that the 5 steps that they provide transcend through all generations, to Misha's last point, right? So those are things to be thinking about, especially whether it's in the workplace or any kind of organization, that with those 5 steps, you can pierce through the generations, right? Even though there are some slight differences about respect, you know, whether it's people or positions or both, or thought processes, you know, and then finding ways where in a school environment we can respectfully disagree, right? And you'll hear people talk about, sometimes it's through disagreements that oftentimes we can arrive at some of the best results, right? Because you're looking at things from all angles. So, and to show you, to Cheryl's point about how different generations take things from the previous generation, we have a rendition from definitely a younger than a millennial of Aretha Franklin's masterpiece, if you will, right? And so we are going to listen in here and watch a future generation provide their rendition of what respect means to them. So that's a YouTube clip. I was at a training and I don't remember where it was, and they had used this and they were emphasizing on respect, and certainly, you know, you can see how respect transcends across different generations, but also requires respect from previous generations, and certainly the respect I will do, and certainly the respect that the Queen of Soul deserves. So when you think about one of our Motown favorites, I just thought it was really applicable for tonight. So, so with that, tough act to follow, Aretha Franklin, we are going to transition to Misha and Christine. Talk with us about how do you prefer to learn?
So collectively, Christine and I prefer to learn through reading. I have to like see things to compute better in my head. I can watch videos all day, you know, but if I don't have any words in front of me, I compute it, but not nearly as much as if I was reading. Unless the videos that you were talking about, the different kinds of What you saying?
Sometimes there's videos that can capture something beyond text. For example, if you're watching instruction in the classroom or students dancing or whatnot, you can, so there are some times when other modes are the right modes for the content.
And that is true, but I don't know if I can compartmentalize that all the time. Like when, like I watch videos like that to feel happy, laugh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm not really looking to learn much from it.
Sure,
You know,
right.
looking to gain happiness, you know, or something like that. But
So
if
you
I'm,
would need words in addition
I would
to
need words in
it
addition
to kind of structure,
right,
to connect it to the
to
learning.
connect it, exactly. So, number 4, that was music. Summarize the five steps spoken about. I cannot see that. Summarize the 5 steps spoken about in chapter 18. Training. Why do generations differ in their expectations of training, and how does embracing the 5 steps assist us in working through this generational difference? So,
Yep. Okay, so we have the same 5 steps: acknowledge, appreciate, flex, leverage, and resolve. And really, when it comes to training, acknowledging is really deciding how best to provide training for your audience. Who is your audience, and how do you best provide that training? And then to rally around a common goal. So make sure that the audience understands that the goal is this. And flex, when it comes to training, would mean offering different types of learning opportunities, you know, different choices, whether it's a webinar or videos or collaboration or whatnot. Getting input from people who are provided in the training as to what they like and don't like, and using that to plan and assess the training that we had. I was telling Misha, I was at a event this weekend, and I was part of the planning committee. We put on an event, and then afterwards we got together to talk about it, but nobody did a plus delta. And I did a lot of deltas. But since it wasn't a norm of the organization, that it would have been a little awkward to have deltas when sitting next to the people who just spent months planning it, put their heart and soul into it. And so it really made me appreciate the tools that we have and the practices that are just common. You know, like we can't really even move on anymore unless we've assessed it together, and it's not personal anymore because we're so used to it. So I think like the last couple, the leverage and resolve, to me really means assessing, looking at how it did, getting input, and then planning, you know, from their future trainings as they come up. What we didn't talk about was why do generations differ in their expectations, and it's summarized pretty well on here. Traditionalists got their information through libraries, newspapers, and radios, so they were able to get information like that. And then baby boomers, they grew up listening to lectures, going through school, sitting, listening, to the lectures, and they're used to memorizing stuff, so they're able to take out what they need, even if the training is ineffective, and be successful, because this is just how they adapted. Gen Xers, not so much. They believe that they want to learn, they want training, they know it's important, and they count on the organization to provide that. And millennials they wouldn't even consider not having training as part of what you do. You know, this is how the world works. And they might even start training themselves if it's ineffective. And sometimes when they are on their phones, it's because they're getting additional information about whatever the topic is, because, that's where their mind is.
That's my kids do that. We'll have a discussion, and they just pull up. And I'm like, hello.
Right.
And they'll turn it around. So it's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Exactly,
So
right.
now I'm like, I know. Like, you might wanna have,
Well summarized, and again, you kind of hear the theme that those 5 steps that the author provides to us are steps that we can take to transition through the various generations to keep the whole group together, right? Instead of from coming apart. And then also you heard in what Misha and Christine shared the importance of having a goal or a norm. And then the other thing too that the author talks about is the importance behind, in those groups, workplaces, organizations, of not taking things personally, you know. To go back to Shirley's example about the Secretary of Education for the United States, her reflection, right? And certainly it's personal to us because we're from Michigan, right? Regardless of whether you support or don't support. But in Shirley's commentary, if you go back to it, she's choosing to not take it personal and make it personal to Michigan. But certainly she could. And it could be respected by some. But, just something to think about. So, well summarized. I would encourage everybody, regardless of how far you got with the reading, on page 215, if you would go back and take a look at that at some point, page 215, it talks exactly about what Misha and Christine had mentioned with what UPS did to make sure that training met the needs of all 4 generations. And the reason that they were doing that is because, if you go back a few pages before that, it's talking about how in the next 6 years there's going to be a massive exodus into retirement over the next 5 to 6 years or so in leadership positions. And so UPS, as they have people embarking on retirement, and then we all know how everybody likes to now, for the most part, have packages show up on their doorstep, what that meant for them as a shipping company and what they needed to do, because they knew that they had a number of upcoming retirements. And so the things that they did to meet the needs of all the generations in terms of training so that they could be successful as a company. So kind of neat what their approach was. So just something to go back and look at. So with that, we're going to transition to Becky's group and see if she was able to bring Brian and Steve together.
Not so much.
Something here.
Yeah, I hear that.
How'd they do?
They did just fine. There's no arguing.
She knows Brian needs to sign off on her hours.
You notice where she's sitting, right?
Teacher. Question number 5, work ethic. This is a common part where the author talks about that people can really come apart, right? Some good conversation going on over here.
Yeah, we enjoyed it, and some of the thoughts that we had in terms of the work ethic was doing the job that you're asked to do. And so we talked in terms of, in some ways it's hard to measure depending on what type of business it is. If it's a creative arts, then maybe it doesn't need to be done at this particular time. It can be done over, or midnight, because that's when you're most creative or whatever. But if it's a factory job where this person is dependent on that person, then that's a different kind of context. So we talked about in terms of doing the job that you're asked to do. What did I miss there?
I think maybe when, and maybe this is just my own personal struggle in terms of work ethic, in terms of, because I'm very much, here's a job you have to do, just do it. I don't need to know, when and how and that kind of thing. But personally, it's like, if I do go through something in half the amount of time that I'm given, then, then I just kind of think there's some obligation to then pick up something else or do something else or help somebody else or get involved in something else. You can, maybe you can coast a little bit, but there should be some, picking it up and so I think I'm kind of in the middle. I'm one of those cuspers where that still does kind of bother me. But that's
and not milking it. So let's say you're given 8 hours to do a task and it only took you 5, well, then maybe we ought to reevaluate what the task is, and let's reassign it to 5.5 hours or whatever, and then let's fill up the rest of that.
Yeah, it's, an experience just popped in my brain. When I was working at, I was working a summer job in college, and it was at Baker. And I was relieving people. They were on vacation, and I was relieving them. And the very first job I got, I got a very strong, clear message. So I was, the 2-liter bottles? So they would go through this machine, and this machine would put the label on. So my job was to break the machine down, clean everything really good, get all the soap or all the glue and stuff off, and then put it back together so that it was perfectly clean, could operate on the next shift. And it was, so when the guys working me through it, I'm kind of nervous, still young, and I wanted to work all summer, blah, blah, blah. So I'm listening, I'm getting everything in, and I'm so nervous because he told me like 3 or 4 times, emphatically, staring at me with this is an 8-hour job. I do it in 8 hours. I'm like, man, I'm really gonna bust my butt because I gotta get this done. I want this job, everything. And last thing he said when he leaves, this is an 8-hour job. This didn't make me feel much better, right? So as soon as he leaves, I busted my butt. I got about 3/4 of the way through it, and I'm thinking, it's only been about an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then I realized, this is an 8-hour job. It was a long summer. Yeah, so the job that if you, and I was busting because I thought it was going to take me 10 hours and I was just doing it in 8 hours. No. It was, if any of us were doing it regular, it's probably legitimately a 4-hour job. But you had to make it a 10-hour job.
Yeah,
And that really
you had to-
bugs me.
you had to-
And I had to do that.
You had to make sure it
It
took
took me
8
8
hours to do it.
You're making us look bad, Brian.
That's what they were saying.
Yeah.
And the guy that told me how to do it, you did not want to make him look bad. It was a midnight shift, and I wasn't much taller back in those days. You paint the picture.
That is hilarious.
That was
Oh, God. That's all right. It's okay. That was good, Brian. Yeah.
Any thoughts on number 6?
You have a good connection with the steak and the meal.
Yeah, he used that example. Where did I put that?
So perhaps this might be a good place to transition, Steve, and then maybe we can come back. If
Okay.
That's all right. So everyone has their cards. So decide if you are having beef or if you're having fish. So decide, beef or fish.
Are those the right colors?
Yes, beef, red, fish, pink, it's salmon, sorry, salmon, or tuna. If you want some other kind of fish, sorry, we're out of it tonight. Beef or fish, so choose your main course there. And then go ahead and add a side salad. And then go ahead and add your vegetables. Yellow squash tonight. And then go ahead and add dessert.
Say it's key lime pie.
It's not Brian's birthday yet.
Okay.
So, when you look at your 4 cards, right, then go ahead and write beef or fish, and then label your salad, label your vegetable, and label your dessert. And then once you've done that, go ahead and flip the cards over. And then write work or profession on the back of your beef or your fish. So you're gonna write your profession or work, just the word work or profession. And then on your salad card, go ahead and write, worship or spirituality on your salad, on the back of your salad card. And then go ahead and write family and friends on your yellow card. We talked a lot about family and friends and what different generations feel about family and friends and the role that they play, and we talked about TV. And then go ahead and put, on your blue dessert card, go ahead and put recreation or hobby. So then, Steve, I'll go ahead and let you pick up where you were, I think, maybe headed.
All right.
And what page are you on?
I'm on 219, the middle of the page, and this is actually in the second step. I'll give you the first one is acknowledge, and he gives two good questions there at the bottom of 218. Doesn't matter how many hours I work, if as long as I get the job done. And then secondly, can I come into the office?
That was Ryan's Fagel story.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or can I work from elsewhere? And we talked a little bit about that wasn't even a possibility not too long ago, that you know, 30 years ago, you couldn't connect via internet. It wasn't even around, you know, those kind of things until Al Gore showed up. All right, here's appreciate. The simplest way to summarize how the generations see work differently is to compare work to a meal. The older two generations see work as the steak and everything else as life as the vegetable, salad, and dessert.
So I just want to pause there for a moment. If you remember during our book study at Fisher, one of Steve's comments was that he was starting to see where the divide might be with the traditionalists and the baby boomers and the Gen Xers and the millennials. So here the author is making the same connection for us again.
The younger two generations see life as a waffle. Work is one quadrant of the waffle, and everything else, friendships, family, volunteer work, religious organization, night classes, even weekend drumming in a rock band, make up the other three squares. So please, boss, keep your work syrup off of the other three squares.
So what's the metaphor there from your group that the author's trying to make with how the different generations view work? What's the connection?
In my mind, it's just work and where it's prioritized. You know, in each generation, in their viewpoint, you know, millennials don't necessarily prioritize work as the most important thing. Life doesn't revolve around work. Whereas, you know, you've got baby boomers who were raised in a competitive market. They had to focus on work, so work is the most important thing.
And they have fun at work too. The author talks a lot about that. Yeah. Excellent connection. Steve, you want to add something?
Just the idea, going back to the traditionalists, they survived those deep dark years, and so if I don't work, I don't eat kind of idea. Whereas I'm not sure that the millennial even thinks in those categories.
That's a good point. So I just wanted to send us through that activity because I think the author really hits at home, you know, the differences of how generations view work and then certainly work ethic, right? So you can see where a sticking point could arrive if we're not in good communication, or if you're not using those 5 steps, you know, of acknowledging and leveraging and flexing, right? And so on and so forth, because those things could either tear us apart or they can bring us together. And one of the main points that the author drives home is really twofold. And I guess if you could have any 2 takeaways from the book, it would be that you focus on why, not the what. Not what tears us apart, but why different generations view things differently as they do. And that's why we did so much front loading at the start of the book study, of looking at each individual generation. And so whether that's at work or in organizations, or even within your families, those things can either bring us together or pull us apart. But if you stop and think about and not take things personally, like Misha and Christine talked about, that, you know, if you stay focused on why people do as they do or why they respond the way that they do, oftentimes it's because of those main events that they were brought up with. And then the second takeaway, which leads us to our bonus question, is what it's going to entail, and that's for people to be leaders, right? And so in Shirley's example, even though, you know, whether you agree or disagree with the Secretary of Education, you know, that's true leadership, right, in that moment. Because even if people still chose to sit, at least they still had to grapple with the question. Or if you go back to Misha's point, when Misha provided some commentary after Shirley and Cheryl had finished about respect, right? Like, those are moments where it pushes the thinking. And so that's one of the things that the author is adamant about, is that regardless of where you're at, organization, institution, families, that it's going to require leadership rather than management. So for our exit question this evening, or our exit ticket, if you could have lunch or dinner with any person that's a leader in your mind, dead or alive, famous or not, who would you choose to have dinner with? Who wants to go first?
Cheryl.
Madam President?
Mine would be George Washington. Years ago, because I spent a lot of time in DC with the history of our nation and stuff, and I discovered Mount Vernon with my brother and sister-in-law. And I like to visit it at all seasons, and you learn a lot about the time and what George Washington went through, and his challenges and stuff. A lot of people didn't like him, you know, if you brought in slavery and stuff, but then a lot of people respected him because he was a very good leader. So I think I would be very interested, as long as he left his wooden teeth at home, just to see, you know, because just watching and reading and learning about him.
Good choice. Sure.
Oh, but I just want to say one thing about George Washington. We found out when we went, Cheryl and I went to Mount Vernon, and we found out that it wasn't him, so much him, that had all the slaves, it was Martha. So I didn't know that.
No, Shirley had a good takeaway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was the person that I just admired. Actually, I have two, David Keith and John Conyers. Now, John Conyers was my congressperson from when I first started voting. When I lived in Detroit, I was District 1. And one of my mother's friends got me into this political thing. She started me out as a precinct delegate. And so we would always, and a lot of times, he would walk my precinct with me. And then we would have lunch.
That's neat.
And it was just fantastic. And then with Damon Keith, he was a deacon at my church.
Okay.
And he was just fabulous. And his wife, who was a doctor, and I loved both of them. And I'm telling you, both of them were so smart. And Dr. Keith would always say to us, now, if you're feeling sick and nobody's home with you, because you know, Judge Keith would be in Washington a lot, you go to the nearest police station. And the police station from her was probably about maybe a 5-minute drive. And you know, when she was feeling really bad and she drove to the police station and she collapsed right there at the police station. So, you know, and she would tell us things like that, and I'd write all that stuff down and put it in my memory, and it was just great.
So kind of a neat connection. I think I heard the other day that the Damon Keith Law Building in Wayne State's campus is actually, for the first time ever, to your point, going to be a voting precinct
Yes, it is.
in the March primary. So, because he passed not that long ago, right?
And when he, at his funeral, I gave his daughter, had a picture of my mom and dad and Damon Keith and Dr. Keith, and I made a copy of that picture and I gave his daughter that picture so she can have it.
How cool. That's so cool. Very neat. And our second group, Tamisha and Christine. You could have,
Elaborated on this bonus question.
gonna put the leader on the hot seat, huh?
We both.
I have so many though, I have a couple others.
I know, I just said, but we said the Obamas, Michelle, Barack, or either or, together, whatever. You know, but I would love just to have a frank and normal conversation with them to see how they accomplished all of these things before, not during the presidency. I want to know what they were before that.
Yeah.
You know, how, you know, what happened? How did you become all of these things before the presidency? That's what I want to know. But then I'm sitting here thinking, I love old school stuff, so I'm going way back. Da Vinci, I would love to talk to him.
That's a good one.
Einstein, I would love to talk to him.
That's a good one.
But Da Vinci is that's my all-time favorite genius person that I would love to have this, you know, sit in conversation. My kids think I'm nuts because 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm online talking about ancient stuff, you know, because now that I think about reading all that stuff, it's all coming back now in the present day, if you pay attention enough.
That's gonna come in handy for our next book study.
Yeah.
In terms of innovation.
Yeah.
He's kind of like the forefather of innovation. Great choices. Do you want to add?
The only other one would be Orville Hubbard. Does anyone know Orville Hubbard?
Oh, yeah.
Because he was the mayor in Dearborn for many
Right,
years, and he
right.
was a very well-known racist.
Yes.
Oh,
And
that is interesting.
I mean, his policies still impact the city
Yeah.
in the area. And
They did.
I have a book on him that I was able to get. It's out of publication now, but it's just kind of his, just a lot of really interesting information. And my dad was a real estate agent during that time and a civil rights activist. And so he has some really great stories. So I don't think we would get anywhere because we stand on very two opposite sides of the road. But it would be interesting nonetheless.
The meal would be super something that didn't require.
It might be either really short or I don't know. But.
Can I say something about that?
Please.
I used to work for Wade Tribbett Associates in Taylor, and I was the only African American female at that company. And I worked for the vice president, and he's the one. What they did Wade Tribbett Associates. You know, they do the underground, and they all this drained. They used to
Survey.
do all that, yeah. So we would go down underneath. We put on our hard hats and go down underneath in the drains. So Dearborn was one of our accounts. So he sent me to Dearborn City Hall, but he had to call them to tell them that I was African American and I needed the blueprints. Do you know they had the blueprints waiting at the door for me because they didn't want me to go in? But it was good. It was okay. I said, "Oh, thank you so much," you know. And the girl that gave them to me, she said, "Boy, you're such a pleasant person."
Oh my God.
So she said, "I thought maybe you might have been scared." I said, "Of what? Orville? I'm not scared of you." And she just fell out laughing.
It's an incredible experience.
It was good though.
The subtitle of the book is called Orville Hubbard or something like that. It's The Dictator of Dearborn.
Yes,
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Fitting title.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Baker?
I have a few that kind of pop in my mind. One would be George Washington Carver, but then also
Which will also come in handy for our next
Oh, that's great.
But another innovator.
Well, I think probably it would be Jimmy Carter. I think in some ways he was a terrible president, but a fascinating man, and I like actually 1,000 times more what he's done post-presidency than what I did in presidency.
Yeah.
But I remember listening to, in the middle of the night, the returns. I was in Guatemala at the time. We had a boarding school, and listening to the election returns on transistor radio.
Oh my gosh.
Very under the covers, literally and figuratively, because we weren't supposed to be doing that. And so I've just had a fascination with him, and just the man that he is, and husband, and character, and I'll call him a true Southern gentleman, which I don't know that we have a lot of. So probably Jimmy Carter.
Compelling choice. Compelling choice. For a number of reasons. Yeah. Becky?
So my first pick was Michelle Obama. That's where I went right away. But thinking some more, I actually would love to meet Ellen DeGeneres. She is just such an awesome person. Yes.
So just real.
Positive, and the things she does. Yeah.
So just real quick, the clip of Ellen and Michelle Obama shopping together.
Oh yeah.
We can end on that note.
Yeah, it's great.
Hysterical.
Yeah. But just the positive influence that she has on so many different communities, I think, is astounding.
Good choice. Good choice. Brian.
I actually, one of the things I like to do when I'm reading outside of education is the founding fathers and other historical leaders kind of things. And one of the guys that intrigues me the most out of the founding fathers is John Adams. And everything he did to orchestrate the this country.
Was he the father, or
he was the father?
The father.
Yeah, second president. And he had such integrity. And this is something I didn't know before I read his book, was that he actually he was not a separatist at first. And he tried to get everyone to cool their jets and to just try to work through this and everything. And one of the things that flipped the switch for him was he actually was asked to defend the soldiers of the Boston Massacre. And so he's a young lawyer in Boston where all this stuff's going on. Think about a career killer, right? Who's gonna defend him? Not only did he defend them, but he got them off in Boston. They were all found innocent, and they killed Bostonians, right? And and because there were circumstances behind it that we don't know, you don't hear about, right? And so he does this, and then King George gets kind of angry about some other stuff, and then he says that nobody under the crown will ever be tried in Boston or the not the United States,
Wherever
but the
go,
colonies.
that whole
And he's like, "Are you kidding me? What I just did for you and for your, get these guys off because I believe in these principles and everything, and you're going to do that to us?" And that really kind of turned for him. And but I just really thought that was such integrity. He believed that they were entitled to a fair trial, and nobody was going to give them a fair trial. Nobody would defend them, so he stepped up and did it. And I just thought, So, and everything he did in terms of orchestrating things, he was the one that got Washington to be the general of the Continental Army, because he knew that they needed Virginia to, or they were going nowhere. And he was the one, he was supposed to write the Declaration of Independence, but he got Jefferson to do it again because he knew that he needed Jefferson to be part of that inner circle in order to carry it all out and stuff. So he really did some pretty amazing things behind the thing. And then just his relationship with Jefferson, the closeness and then the hatred, and then they finally came together again. And it's just, It's amazing. He died 50 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence
Yes.
on 4th of July. Same time that Jefferson did. And it's an intriguing story. So I would love to sit down with him and get his inner thinking about what was going on and how did it all happen.
What's the name of the book, John Adams?
There is a book, John Adams, that, but there's also a really good one is Founding Fathers, the same author. I'll get to the name of it, but both of those books are excellent. They talk about all that. McCullough, the last name is McCullough, is the author.
Have you read any of the archive correspondences between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson?
I haven't personally read those, but just the story behind those archives and how thoughtful they were to make sure that they were all preserved.
Right. It's a lot of them too.
Yeah.
That is so
They knew that they were going to be
Crazy.
something special,
Yeah.
both of them.
They are.
Fascinating choices. And so, and that's really one of the author's main points is that, with 4 different generations, that's going to require leadership. And so it's important to think about that question because it's really those qualities and attributes, just like we saw the little girl in the video, right? Using things from previous generations. But it's really going to be those leadership principles that each of you bring into all the organizations, including our own, that are going to help us work through sticking points and keep us all working together and in the right direction, especially, at the precipice of going into potentially the bond. You think about if we go down that path, what it's going to entail. And we're going to need to appeal to all those generations, right? And it's going to take a lot of great leadership. And so there's no question that I think it makes us stronger as a district. And hopefully you enjoy the book study.
So question,
Madam Vice President, that concludes.
I have a question.
Question?
When Jason talks about leaders, so are leaders born or are leaders formed? That's always been a big, it's been a topic of discussion. Are you born a leader or do you develop into a leader?
I think it's both.
I don't know.
I mean, it comes up a lot throughout life, when you talk about leadership and what makes a good leader.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think you were born with it. I think
it's both.
I think it's a process.
Good question.
but
Yeah.
it gets you thinking, are
It
there
does.
certain characteristics you're born with that steer to, or
Yeah.
it's your stories that help form you into a leader?
Mm-hmm.
Because all great leaders have a story, like you
Yeah.
said, when you start looking at Adams or Washington or Jefferson, something chose,
Yeah.
impacted them that pushed them in a certain direction to do what they did.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
That's a great question. Another similar question to that is it because of the experiences that you've had that formulate you into being the person and the leader that you are, or is it your responses to those experiences that make you the leader that you are in your family, your district, your neighborhood? It's a kind of a similar question that's fun to contemplate. So I've really enjoyed the book study with the group, and I hope that you have as well. And
I think you did a
Pretty good
great
job.
job.
And seriously, if you have not seen the clip of Ellen and
Yeah.
Michelle Obama at CVS, it is hysterical.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate all the work you've done on this.
My pleasure.
Brought a great spin to our book studies.
Thanks.
You did a really, really nice job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
If there's nothing else that comes before this board, I adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
One more thing.
okay.
So we're done with one, and we are going to move into another book study. And this is going to have a little twist to it. You know that we've asked Christine to work on what do we need to be doing within our walls before we share build any walls or tear down walls or decide what we're going to purchase for inside those walls. And in terms of instructional practices and curriculum and how do we prepare kids for their future. And I'm telling you, she's working her butt off on this thing. And so she's going to lead us through our next book study, which is not going to be a book study.
Right.
So Christine, why don't you talk about all the work you've been putting into this next event?
Okay, so we are going to have a video study. And the reason why is, well, first of all, Brian and I started looking at potential books we could have regarding the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the future of work and all of those types of things. And there are books out there, there's articles, there's magazines, but there wasn't anything really that encapsulated what we needed, and it's really cutting edge, so it's changing all the time. And so we started thinking, what if we had, look for some video. So we, so the study will be videos, and what my thought is that we will share the topics with you in advance, and I have a schedule that I'll give you tonight, and some video clips in advance, and if you can watch them in advance, that's fine, but they'll be probably 2 to 10 or 15 minutes for each one, and then we'll have activities and conversations surrounding each one, and we will show them the night of as well. So I know some people like to see things in advance, so you might want to have it available. We will start with looking at what are the 4 industrial revolutions, what are the 3, and then what is this 4th one that we're in now, and how do they all differ, how do they compare, and then we'll look at the common elements that are some of the common technologies that make up the 4th industrial revolution, such as 3D printing, robotics, the Internet of Things, and so each week will be a dive into that technology. And then in the latter portion of the study, we'll look at what jobs of the future will look like and how that impacts education and how we prepare our students for these things. So that's the general overview. Let me give you the schedule.
Like these new schools.
Yeah, like the schools that were going on, and you guys know that some of you have been on the tours with us, and we've been on some that we haven't taken the full group to. We were on one today, and Becky went too, looking at programming, and it's interesting. There's a lot of similarities, there's intersections, and so we're trying to get as much input as we can so that we can make plans with as much background information as possible.
Looking forward to it.
I am too.
Dr. Hofer, will you send this to our 3Ms and teams?
Yes, I will.
All right. This is good. Are we done? Since there's no further business that comes before this board, I adjourn this meeting at 8:39. Thank you. That was good.
Is the camera still on?
I will check.
Or did we not turn it on at all?
No, we did turn it on. And it's still recording. I never know how to.
Yes, we get to the school all over now. I used to.
I went to see you a little bit.
Did you?
And I said to
Jason, where's the power button? Oh, there it is.